In the theme of Father's Day, medical professionals of Reddit, what's the best reaction you've seen from a dad during and or after the birth of his child? I've been told that my dad's response to my entering this world was "It's a person." I was born in the 80s and the ultrasound technology wasn't that great. What my parents didn't know was that instead of one baby there were two. Our hearts were beating at the same time and they could never tell the sex, so they thought it was just one giant baby. So, I come out. Then my mom says, "Doc, I still feel pain," and he looks and says, "I see another head." Apparently my father said, "What the frick, whose baby is that?" And then my sister popped out. They were obviously flawed. When I was born, my dad pulled out a Sharpie and drew a star at the bottom of my foot to make sure they didn't lose me. I was a C-section baby. A couple of years ago, the topic came up with my parents while drinking. I mentioned that it sounds kinda gross. My father looks me right in the eye and say, "Have you ever seen Alien?" It was just like that. I've seriously threatened my wife with watching the Alien trilogy when she was pregnant. I almost passed out at the first C-section. When I was born, my father, who is a gynecologist himself, came from watching me do my big entrance, or exit, depending on how you look at it, and said to my mom, "You're not going to believe what you just did." I was over 10 pounds at birth. My uncle was 13 pounds when he was born in the late 1930s. My grandmother was 5 feet 1 inches tall and he was her first child. That woman had a uterus and vagina of steel. No other explanation. Apparently she couldn't feel her legs properly for about 3 months after. My dad went to the hospital to visit me and my mom at the time. After hearing a baby scream so loud you could hear it from the elevator, he turns to the nurse with a silly grin on his face and tells her, "Well, this one has quite the vocal cords." I'm feeling sorry for his parents already. She turns to him and tells him, trying not to laugh, "You'll tell me, it's yours." My dad missed my birth because he was choking on a sandwich. A story comes to mind of a friend who, when his son was born, just started crying hysterically and hugged everyone. The doctor, nurses, he even ran out into the hallway and hugged people visiting other patients. Always makes me smile when I think of it. My friend told me his story. He was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, so he was a little purple when he was born. His mom couldn't see so what he looked like. His dad told her, "He looks like a California raisin." I actually had the reverse problem. I was hyperoxygenated and was red. My dad actually said, "Put this one back, she's not done yet." My dad is a carpenter and was at work when he was told that my mom was in labor with me. His reaction? He went into a shocked stupor and accidentally shot his thumb with a nail gun. And that's the story of why my then 11-year-old sister had to fill out my birth certificate. My birth was both a terrifying and wonderful day all at the same time. My mother hemorrhaged pretty badly, so my dad had this turbulent hour in which he was both crying with joy over the birth of his first child, and also with terror at the thought of losing his wife. The doctors wouldn't let him back in the room while they were trying to save my mom's life. So apparently for this hour all he did was pace the hallways outside the room holding me, and refusing to let anyone else near me, as if he was already preparing for it to just be me and him. My dad has never stopped being an utterly devoted and emotional father. Yes, my mother survived. At a forceps delivery last night, the dad-to-be was so horrified, impressed by the amount of pain his wife had gone through during her labor, that he phoned up his own mum to say thanks. When I was born after 13 hours of labor, my dad looked at my full head of black hair and blue eyes, looked at my mom and said, "Are you sure she's mine?" My grandfather was the one the nurses let carry me back to my mom post cleanup, and when my mom asked if I was okay, he said, "Yeah, I don't think the extra 2 toes will be a big hindrance," which led to my mom frantically tearing the blankets off to check my toes. Basically, the men in my family are dongs. My brother was born about a year after me, and my mother had gone into false labor so many times that she only knew she was really in labor when she couldn't sleep that night. Anyways, later at the hospital, the doctor said that she was gonna be in labor for a lot longer, so he went and ate dinner. She wasn't in labor for much longer. My grandmother delivered the kid and was holding him when a nurse walks by and says, "You can't do that." My grandmother retorts with, "Well, I'm not gonna put it back." That doesn't sound like a very good nurse. My father, up until I was born, had not ever seen a newborn baby. Naturally, he assumed that all babies look like they do in movies or commercials. As you can imagine, he was quite disappointed when an alien-looking thing is handed to him and introduced to him as his daughter. He handed me back to the doctors and went outside for a smoke to calculate how much all of the plastic surgeries were going to cost. Newborn babies are kind of gross looking, sticky and covered in baby cheese. My own husband during my first C-section. The doc asks if he wants to look over the curtain at the baby being delivered. He looks over, looks back, with a look of horror. What's wrong? Your insides are on your outsides. I will never forget the look on his face or the sound of his voice. They are ripping you apart is what my husband said in that exact situation. When I was born, they took me off immediately to clean me, take my footprints, bundle me up, and whatnot. I guess the two nurses were in a bit of a hurry and were doing both at the same time and managed to get a print of my left foot twice instead of a left and a right. Apparently upon seeing the print he became extremely distressed and literally ripped the blanket off me to make sure I didn't actually have two left feet. When my older sister was being born, my dad was in the room. He was so excited to watch he screamed, "Honey, you gotta see this." My mum deadpan, "I'm a bit busy. Can I get back to you, dear?" A buddy of mine just cried the whole time his twins were being born. He was 25 at the time. His wife was rather unamused. Kind of on topic, my mom said when she woke up my dad to tell him her water broke, he jumped out of bed and started sweeping. She asked WTF he was doing and he said, "I have to clean, the baby is coming." Just imagine what he's going to think of these floors. According to my parents, I was a super fast delivery, like so fast that the doctor's nurses had stepped out of the room to go attend to someone else and my mom grabbed my dad and told him to get ready to catch me. My dad didn't even have time to put on gloves and had to catch me, baby gunk and all. Apparently he smiled, passed me to the nurses, who came rushing in, kissed my mom on the lips, then leaned over and vomited everywhere. My brother's birth was less than 15 minutes after my mother's water broke. They cut my mom's pants off and that was as far as they got. Doctors and nurses were dumbfounded. My son's father is a very well-educated, well-spoken man. He was with me in the hospital room when I gave birth, and the first thing he said after seeing our son for the first time was, "Oh my god, look at his balls. They are huge on a newborn." I was born on Father's Day, haha. Funny story, my dad had got tennis rackets and tennis balls as a Father's Day gift, so he was playing with them in the basement, hitting balls against the wall when my mom went into labor. So she yelled at him from the top of the stairs that the baby was coming, and my dad, he says, "Okay, dear, I'll be down here playing tennis." She was livid, and "Thank you for birthday wishes. Not till the 20th, though, D." My mom went into labor late in the evening. My dad was asleep. He had to work early. She went in and said, "The baby is coming. Get up," he replied. "Calm down. It's fine. Go have a cold bath." So she had my grandma take her to the hospital. In my dad's defense, if he sleeps as heavily as me, he probably wasn't even awake for this. My biological father was out drinking while I was born. My mom's best friend and the man I consider my father was there the whole time and used to tell me all the time how I could fit in one of his hands. Each time he told me he looked teary-eyed. When my dad was born, my grandpa wasn't even there. He was asleep in the lobby of the hospital. The doctor had to go and find him to tell him he was a father. When he came into the delivery room and the doctor showed him my dad, he only had one thing to say: "I thought they were supposed to be cute." In his defense, dads in the room didn't become common until the 70s and 80s. My dad always said I looked like an undercooked lizard. It was a Sunday and my mom was in labor with me. The doctor comes in and asks, "How's it going?" Mom: "Oh, I'm feeling." Doctor: "Oh no, the football game. The Bears are playing. How's it going?" Dad: "Up by 7. I was delivered by C-section, but apparently my mom's contractions were so intense that while holding my dad's hand, she squeezed so tight that she broke his hand. Mind you, my dad is 6'4" with huge hands and my mom is only about 5'5". The day I was born, my dad took me down every hall in the hospital and showed me off to everyone who would look. "Look how beautiful my little girl is." My mom said he was gone with me for over an hour. That is just the sweetest thing. Put a big grin on my face. Look at this beautiful thing that I made. I was in the or assisting with the C section. Dad was there and he passed out and crap himself. I thought that was pretty fantastic. My dad likes to tell the story of my birth over and over. They knew I would be born early. At 6 months the doctors realized they couldn't keep me in any longer. They warned my dad that I wouldn't cry because I was so premature. Not only did I come out mad as heck, but I screamed my little head off too. They also told my dad that at 2 pounds, I only had a 5% chance of survival. 1973 mind you. I proved them wrong on both counts. I was a preemie, born at 26 weeks, and came out screaming bloody murder as well. Cheers. My dad broke his back a few days before my mom went into labor with my brother. He was still in the hospital recovering from surgery, not able to walk around yet. My mom went into labor in the same hospital and my dad demanded for a large enough room for 2 beds and that they wheel his ass down to her room so he could be with her. So my dad was laying in a hospital bed with a broken back right next to my mom when she had my brother. Thankfully not one that I personally saw. But when my younger cousin was born they had someone who was still training in the room observing and whatnot. Well, after the birth she was in charge of taking care of the placenta. It slipped out of her hands and splattered all over the floor. He was so disgusted by it that he fainted. Naturally, like most babies, I was crying after I was born. My dad was yelling at the nurses saying that they were doing something wrong since I wouldn't stop crying. They kicked him out of the room. For the birth of my oldest brother, my dad was holding my mom's hand. After he was born, my mom noticed he was rubbing his hand. She asks him why he's rubbing his hand. My dad said, "Well, you were squeezing my hand pretty hard." My mom asks, "Why didn't you tell me I was hurting you?" Dad says, "Well, I figured you were in more pain than I was." That's adorable. Oh, my dad started freaking out so much when I was born that he stole my mom's oxygen mask for himself. The doctors started yelling at him about how the baby, me, needed the oxygen and had to steal it away from him. An older resident once told me a story about how he was working in NYC in his youth. There was a blizzard and a guy couldn't get his wife to the hospital in time. She gave birth at home and they brought them in to check up on the baby and mother. The dude is obviously in shock from the delivery and keeps saying, "I told him, the baby, to stay in there. I told him to stay." Not an hour old and he has already stopped listening to me. Cracks me up every time he tells it. I'm just getting a hilarious mental image of this guy screaming stop, stop at his wife's vagina. When I was younger and mad at my parents, I told them I hoped that I was switched at birth because there was no way I could be related to them. My mom said that wasn't possible because my dad literally never let go of me when I was at the hospital. He stayed with me the whole time because he was afraid someone would try to switch their crappy baby with his awesome baby. A gen med student here. After the baby came out, both parents were so happy I almost cried. The mom had some small vaginal tears, which is normal, so as the doctor was suturing the tears the dad goes, "Hey doc, can you throw in a couple extra in there for me?" The wife gives him the look of death. Without missing a beat the doctor says, "Sorry, I don't think I could make it small enough for you." Even the mother's vagina was crying. When my brother was born his head was like a lemon from being shoved out a birth canal. My dad looked at him, then asked the doctor if his head was going to stay like that. He also wrote my name wrong on my birth certificate. I love my dad. Dad here. My second child was born with bright, shiny red hair. Neither me nor her mom have red hair. There were about 10 or 15 assorted doctors, interns, nurses, etc. in the room. One of the interns sees the hair and immediately says, "So, does red hair run in your family?" Every medical professional in the room sucks in a breath. They knew the dangers of asking such a question, probably from previous births. I looked the intern in the eye and said yes, hers and mine. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief and immediately went back to what they were doing. Had I been quicker on my feet, I would have said something to the effect of, "No, wait, frick." I knew it and stormed out while everyone glared evilly at the intern. It would have taught him a lesson. My dad was a singer when I was little. He'd sing to me before I was born. I always heard that the first time he held me he started singing Brown Eyed Girl and I stopped crying to listen because I recognized his voice. You've been visited by the Snug Smug. You will be blessed with cozy, comfy sleep, but only if you comment sleep snug. Smug. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.